There's an investigation that's underway to determine the cause of the crash between a scholar transport vehicle and a truck. The death toll from the collision near Vanderbijlpark in southern Gauteng has risen to 14. A number of pupils this morning remain in hospital. Some are said to be in a critical condition. President Cyril Ramaphosa sent his condolences to the affected families. Now, eyewitnesses at the scene say the driver of the vehicle seemed to be overtaking several vehicles when the accident occurred. Mpia is the Gauteng Transport Department spokesperson and joins us now for more. Lesiba, good morning and thanks for your time. Sorry that it's happening under such tragic circumstances. Maybe as an opener, I imagine some investigations were underway from yesterday that included the Transport Department and police. What new can you tell us about what you found out in the hours after this tragedy?
Thank you very much, Iman. You can imagine a very difficult morning. We're struggling to recover from what we experienced yesterday as a province, as a nation. And indeed, the MEC conveys her heartfelt condolences to the families, and she wishes those that are in hospitals a speedy recovery. We have received the preliminary reports that are in the public domain. There are speculative reports as well that we have received. At this current moment, we're still verifying those particular reports, and this points us into the fact that the driver might have been unlicensed, including the vehicle itself. So at the current moment, we're still depending on the police's investigations with the information we have at our disposal.
What is your attitude, Lesiba, as a department on scholar transport vehicles? I mean, is it something that the department takes responsibility for? We've seen that responsibility being deferred to the parents who are appointing and paying for some of these drivers and scholar transport vehicles. So I would just love some clarity on your perspective on who takes responsibility for this.
It's a shared responsibility. The department will take the responsibility in terms of the regulation of these scholar transport, including the compliance that these transports should adhere to, particularly when they are on the roads. That's the first. The second is that, yes, we have appealed to parents that when utilizing private transportation in particular, please take caution, inspect the vehicle before you can pay for it, because every parent that spends their money has got to realize value for money. But the essence is that our children must be transported in safe and reliable transports. And but I must say that it's also quite a challenging thing. Because one, there's a parent that leaves for work at 5:30 in the morning when the child is picked up at 7. So it becomes very difficult for the parent to actually do that. But over and above that, there's a system that the scholar transport, particularly the private scholar transport, use by picking up the child with a vehicle that you most probably are aware of as a parent, and then midway to school, there's an exchange of children from one transport to the other. So much as it is a shared responsibility, it becomes very difficult from the parent point of view. But of course, Iman, we must say that it's very difficult for the parent to monitor and police driver behavior. That is why the MEC would have captured a theme called Itomagawena, that the burden of responsibility, the minute you decide to get behind that wheel, you carry the burden of responsibilities of those around you. Now, it was worse in this case. It was devastating indeed when we heard from eyewitnesses, that this vehicle was overtaking one vehicle after the other, in some instances attempting to overtake more than 3 vehicles. That is just unbecoming driver behavior.
When you talk about that shared responsibility, Lesiba, and then you explain the involvement of the parents, that's on the one side, I'd like to hear from you what the transport department's responsibility in this was? I mean, we know that there have been attempts at codifying and regulating scholar transport providers. As you say, early indications are that this particular driver may not have had, let alone a professional driver's permit, not even a license. The vehicle itself perhaps was not licensed. So what mechanisms does the Gauteng Transport Department have to verify driver qualifications?
Iman, on our roads, the MEC would have been very aggressive in terms of the awareness program that she launched last year after the release of the statistics in Easter. She started a program which was called Itomagawena, which is really a road safety aggressive program. She signed an MOU with the RTMC to have boots on the ground, because as a department, we do not have an element of law enforcement, and I think it's one shortcoming. But of course, we're working integrated with sister departments. In some instances, our program, there are quite a vast number of contrasts between ourselves, DCS, and so forth. So we need an integrated process within the department where we are going to have a full-time dedicated law enforcement, just like in other provinces. Actually, in Gauteng, we've realized that benchmarking with other provinces, we are the only province that does not have a law enforcement within the Department of Roads and Transport. But that's a discussion that is underway together with the Premier's office. But the responsibility we carry is enacted in the National Road Traffic Act, and that is why we have been removing vehicles. And Iman, we can remove as many vehicles. At the end of the day, there's got to be a personal responsibility which is taken by the person who is going to be operating that vehicle. You can have a fully compliant new vehicle, but if you are going to have reckless behavior on the roads, people driving on oncoming traffic, people just skipping red robots, yellow lanes and so forth, then you are having impunity. Our laws are being impugned upon, and that is what we have taken a zero tolerance on through our Gauteng Transport Inspectorate.
I don't know if those things talk to each other, the zero tolerance approach in the context of what you admit is shortcomings around law enforcement. If people know they're not going to be held account, their feet aren't going to be held to the fire, and they can break the rules willy-nilly. I mean, anyone who travels in roads, I want to talk about Gauteng because this is where I live, and watch the impunity with which we see taxi drivers drive. And sometimes you see, you'll see a law enforcement officer there who is not enforcing the law as, a taxi driver drives in the shoulder or in the yellow lane or stops at a non-regulated stop. The culture of impunity is already there, whether we like it or not. It requires then a doubling down on the focus of the Transport Department and law enforcement agencies to get the job done. And that's really the question this morning. It's not the first time we've had scholar transport tragedies in the province. So, what happens next before another set of school children dies before they can even reach the school gate?
Yeah. Look, I think you are raising a very pertinent point that really points down to patriotism. I mean, you can't be a police officer who has taken an oath, and then when someone breaks the law and it just becomes a norm, it also just boils down to unpatriotic law enforcers who decide then to take that bribe in exchange for, freedom for a person who has broken the law. So we must say that ultimately it does boil down to a law enforcement issue. Taken a stance as a department, basically a posture that we are not going to be finger pointing each other, shifting the buck. We will take personal responsibility on where there are lapses in the system, particularly those that have got to do with roads and transport. We're appealing to those that are given an opportunity by this country to serve, to basically be patriotic. Because if you are going to neglect and turn, a blind eye on that person who's going to be breaking the law, the implications are dire, because you might have just taken an opportunistic decision by turning a blind eye and actually taking that particular bribe. So we're calling upon law enforcement to assist us in that regard.
Lesiba, I want to leave the moral philosophy to the side for the moment, and let's talk about the admission by government that we have 2.8 million learners who are relying on private scholar transport that is arranged variously. In often instances, it's by parents. It's an admission, wouldn't you agree, that the state has outsourced learner safety to an unregulated private market, because we do not have a regulated private scholar transport market. We don't have, we can't say who owns this vehicle. What tests did they do to qualify to even be in the market to provide scholar transport?
What we'll admit on is that the implementation needs a serious checking up. But there is regulations that are regulating this particular vehicles. They are actually operating in exchange for revenue. So they are regulated by National Land Transport Act. They decide to then hit the tarmac or the roads, and therefore they are regulated by the National Road Transport Act, where they will be having mandatory, it would be mandatory of them to actually take roadworthiness vehicles, to be mandatory for the vehicle or for the driver to actually renew their professional driver's permit from time to time. So we will agree with you when you say that there are lapses in the system, and that I think as government we've got to take responsibility of that. But there are regulations, and it is expected of all of us to actually know what is expected of us as motorists by the laws of this country. But it's also expected that we need to actually step up on the law enforcement. That is why the MEC would have imposed this 100 strong, and we are believing that it's going to increase in its numbers. This 100 strong team from the RTMC, called the Gauteng Transport Inspectorate, that has evidential statistics that of arrests, of issuing out notices, arresting those that are driving vehicles that are not roadworthy, removing them from the roads, and also taking people to account. So that has been done, Iman.
Has the department, Lesiba, seriously considered creating a system of officially credited school transport providers, so similar to bus operators, and this would be with strict licensing, with monitoring, proper enforcement? And if you have not, what is stopping you?
Over the years, implemented that. That is why you have two categories. Those that are having contracted services with the Department of Education will know that if you are going to qualify for that work, for that tender, there are prerequisites, the tick boxes, boxes that you've got to tick. And part of that is also showcasing that indeed there is a system that you are adhering to. You have got to have an operating license. You have got to ensure that your vehicle is roadworthy and that your vehicle has a lifespan of more than, a lifespan that still remains of more than 15 years. So we are imposing that has got to be the way that we are getting vehicles that will be transporting these kids, which are contracted. In a manner of private scholar transport, indeed, that's where we are saying that there are shortcomings in terms of the enforcement of that. However, we are in the process of actually, effecting, law enforcement that is going to see to it that those private scholar transport adhere to the National Land Transport Act by being able to produce their operating license. They are part of the MEC's bi-weekly meetings of the crisis committee, where she is expediting the process of unlocking the backlog that is affecting the taxi industry, of actually implementing the operating licenses with e-hailers, including the scholar transport, as much as she's doing it with buses. So that's a given. It's not negotiable. They know that once you buy a vehicle and you want to use it in exchange for a vehicle, in exchange for revenue, you are having to adhere to the National Land Transport Act.
All right. It's a subject we are no doubt going to talk about a lot more in a great more detail from different perspectives over the next couple of days. Just as a status update, Lesiba, where's the driver now and has he been charged?
We are informed the driver. We checked. I was with the MEC as late as 11 o'clock yesterday. We checked that the driver is in hospital under heavy police guard. There is culpability. There's a charge of culpable homicide. We have appealed to the law enforcers to say there's evidence that there is reckless and negligent driving here, which is tantamount to murder. And that culpable homicide case has got to also carry within itself a charge of reckless and negligent driving. Our kids were killed. We believe that there's got to be a heavier, measures that are going to be a deterrent to some of these people who are driving recklessly. So the driver is still in hospital under heavy police guard.
Lesiba Mpia, thanks for your time this morning. Appreciate it. He is the Gauteng Transport Department's spokesperson. And it does connect to our poll, still asking for